What is up, y'all? Sparta here. So, for this video, I guess I just want to talk Xperia 1 Mark 5, hopes, whatever, what I expect, again, what I hope, and what to see from going from 2 years of having the 1 Mark 3, and overall, how this has overall been going. So, as you guys know, since LG left the market, I basically have been looking for a phone to essentially replace what LG has, what LG left. And there is really no complete replacement for LG. They basically were like, the V60 for me was, and apologies, it's very windy out today. Minnesota is deciding to be a very windy state as of right now. But the V60 for me was damn near the perfect phone. And yes, it has its flaws. And I'm obviously utilizing it right now to record this video. Obviously, it has its flaws. I'm not saying, oh, it's perfect, because I literally have no issues with it. But looking back at it, I thought that I could just stick with the V60 and not really have any sort of issues. Then, obviously, I had to give up my V60. I got the 1 Mark 3, and for the most part, there are a lot of things that the 1 Mark 3 really does well and obviously excels at compared to the V60. But there were things that I still think Sony should address and that I hope they address with the 1 Mark 5. For one, the battery on this phone has been great. It's still pretty damn good. It's damn near the same as it was when I had it, which pretty much goes by Sony's claims that their batteries will last 2 years, basically stay at damn near full power 2 years later. It's been 2 years that I've had this phone, so that claim, I can say, is actually pretty well substantiated. The headphone jack is definitely nice. I'm not one to sit here and say that. Sorry, let me manual focus here. You guys know I'm not one to say that I don't want a headphone jack on a phone. The V60, that was one of the things about the V60 that most phones don't have and still don't really have to this day, is like a quality headphone jack with, a quality DAC and amp. And the 1 Mark 3 has a quality DAC. The amp is a little bit lackluster, but overall I do still feel if you're using IEMs with low impedance thresholds and whatnot, low resistances, you'll definitely be fine when it comes to that. But overall, I do feel like that's one thing that I hope with the 1 Mark 5 they do address. I doubt they'll address it because they haven't done it since the Xperia 1 Mark 2. And we've had the 1 Mark 4, and it's basically a very similar it has very similar performance to the 1 Mark 3 in terms of its headphone jack. Obviously, it'll have the 8 Gen 2, so I don't really have to worry about that. Going from the 888 to the 8 Gen 2 is going to be a dramatic change, as well as, obviously is going to have, probably still is going to stick with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, one that came from the 1 Mark 4, so that's nice. Gonna have a brighter screen. That's basically what they've been doing with these 4K 120Hz displays, is just making them brighter. The 1 Mark 3 was pretty bright. It's not very bright, but for me it's bright enough. The 1 Mark 4, from what I've seen and what I've heard from people, it's very good in sunlight, so no one really has a problem with that. And obviously 120 Hz. Now, what a lot of people want to see is an LTPO panel from Sony. I don't really see that happening, and I'm going to be completely honest. I think I just prefer a static 120 Hz over it constantly scaling and trying to see what is the best refresh rate to have for particular situations, because I know LTPO has, advanced since the S21 Ultra and whatnot, but what I've noticed using that phone and comparing it to this phone when I had both is that the battery draw is very similar, and having a static 120 hertz, and it doesn't always stay at 120 hertz. Obviously, when the phone throttles, it goes down to 60, but it typically throttles when you're using the phone to a heavy level, playing games for a long period of time and whatnot. So obviously we'll see what happens with the One Mark V and its screen, but overall I do feel like what Sony is going to do is just make it brighter, probably keep the static 120 hertz, which honestly I'm fine with. It hasn't really affected battery life like that, and obviously keep the 4K. They're going to do that because they're basically the only ones on the market that are doing that, and it honestly makes sense to have something that other phones can't claim that they have. HS power control, I want that to be expanded into the camera apps. I really do. To me, it's kind of weird that they pitch these phones as mini alpha cameras and whatnot, but I cannot use HS power control in the video app, in any of the video apps, without side loading and then putting it into the game enhancer and able to get HS power control, which doesn't even work anymore now because I factory reset my One Mark III because I was having fingerprint scanner issues, but which I'll also get to. Just give us a toggle for that in the settings of the Videography Pro and Cinematography Pro apps. To me, it just really doesn't make sense that it's not a thing. It should be a thing. Other thing, this is going to be since the One Mark III, there have been rumors of Sony putting a larger, main sensor into their phone, right? So the One Mark III rumors had it where the main sensor would be a 48 megapixel sensor and all this other stuff. And, a lot of people want that, and understandably so, but Sony has been sticking with the larger 12 megapixel sensor with, obviously larger sensor size. So it's better in low light, but it's not going to be as good in low light as say a LG V60, a Samsung Galaxy S22, S23 Ultra, or any of those, or even an iPhone, even though iPhones have the problem of always automatically putting you into their night mode, so you can't really tell if it's the sensor or the software that's doing it, but whatever. I would like to see them actually go to a larger sensor here. I don't necessarily need them to do it doesn't have to be the 1-inch sensor, mainly because I'm fairly certain they're just going to save that for the Pro I Mark II. Obviously, that makes sense. What I assume they're going to do is probably just put in a large, they probably have developed a larger 1/1.3 inch sensor to put in as the main camera for the One Mark IV. And so long as there's some sort of parity there, I don't really have any sort of issues. The main reason they've stuck with this is so that there's sensor parity, right? All three of these are 12 megapixel sensors. And obviously what has changed from the One Mark III to the One Mark IV is that instead of having a 2-stage telephoto like you have in the One Mark III here, it's just a full flowing, I think it's 85 to 125 millimeter telephoto lens, and it's fully optical, and that's really nice. And all three sensors on the One Mark IV do 120 hertz. Obviously, I hope they keep that too. That'd be really nice. And I hope they also make it to where you could flow through each sensor in 4K 60 without having any sort of issues. Because Currently, you could only do 4K 30 on the One Mark IV, which is fine. That's not terrible, but I would much rather get 4K 60. I don't really care for 8K. They don't need to do 8K. 4K 120 is definitely the better option for me personally. So yeah, like I said, I really do hope that this this larger sensor that they're teasing that they're going to put in the phone is going to be a substantial upgrade. Not necessarily for anything like nighttime photos or anything like that. I don't really care. I don't take that many shots at night, but it'll be better for like lower light situations or like low contrast, like a very contrasty scene and whatnot, to make sure that you gather enough light in so that you can take shots and not have them, lose focus or lose detail. Because I've seen that be a problem on here comparing it to the V60, is that the V60 is far better handles like lower light scenes far better, and not even just lower, like say even bright scenes, sunny scenes, where it'll keep the detail of the photo intact and it won't sit here and like have a washed out image, especially things that are in focus. And that seems to be more of an issue now with the One Mark III for me, is that I've noticed that I've had to use the manual focus a little bit more. But overall, I do feel like their camera system does need a little bit more of an upgrade overall to justify that $1,500 price tag that it's probably going to be at. One terabyte option would be nice, but honestly, I don't really care if they stick at 512. 512 is more than enough. This is a 512 gig One Mark III, and I've not had any sort of issues with the storage on it. At all. I have a 1 terabyte SD card in here. They're going to keep the toolless, the toolless ejection stuff and all that stuff, which I really do appreciate. More phones need to have that. I'd say also they should probably use higher quality materials for the frame of the phone. Hold on a second. Like the phone, I've obviously had this phone for 2 years, but as you guys can see, look at, look at what's happened to like the USB-C port right here, and like the top of the frame right here. It kind of sucks to see this happen. And overall cosmetically, the phone is still pretty much fine. Really don't have any sort of issues overall, but I do hope they utilize a higher quality frame, so that higher quality metal for the frame, so that I don't have these sort of issues with the One Mark V if I decide to go to it, which I most likely am. If not, we'll see. I might just wait for the Pro I Mark II. These expensive ass phones, we'll see what happens overall. But yeah, a higher quality frame would be nice. Obviously, they're going to keep the camera shutter button. I'd say probably they should probably have a little bit better, like more defined way to make me actually feel like I'm actuating the 2-stage shutter, so that when I'm soft pressing to focus, I actually feel it. Maybe have some sort of haptic feedback on the phone itself to make sure that I can actually tell that it's focusing, other than like the green boxes that show up when it's focusing too. And also, when I'm talking about things like larger sensors, larger sensors also help with having better focusing distances and stuff. So I've also noticed that it kind of sucks that, it is a little bit more difficult to focus on this phone when I'm trying to get a little bit closer to a subject. But overall, if they are putting in a larger main sensor into the phone, that's something that's going to be nice. I don't necessarily need them to like make the telephoto longer or anything like that. I think the telephoto that's in the One Mark IV is perfectly serviceable, so long as they can make it to where it does basically the same things the last generation did. I will be totally fine with that. Let's talk about the fingerprint sensor here. They're most likely going to stick with having a power button mounted fingerprint sensor, right? And I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, it's terrible. I actually prefer this over things like an in-display one, because typically with in-display ones, depending on the manufacturer, Samsung, if they don't know how to make it to where the screen actually shuts off in your pocket without having to toggle some fucking mode on, it'll scan your thigh. And that's why I don't really like in-display fingerprint sensors on Samsung phones, because even though the proximity sensor is covered, and even though I turn on pocket mode or whatever, every Samsung night says, oh, turn on pocket mode, and it never works. It never works. And what I will say about Sony is that at least does happen and it does work. But the problem that I'm having now with my One Mark III is that I have to restart it every day, because for whatever reason, the fingerprint sensor will just say fuck it and just stop working. And it's gotten a little better after the recent update that came out, but before that, there are times where it just wouldn't work, and I'd have to put in my pattern. And I've done everything. I've looked on Reddit, I've looked on forums, I've looked multiple places to see if there's any sort of fix. I've factory resetted the phone. I've done a lot of different things, and honestly, nothing has really worked other than me just restarting the phone every day when it stops working, and it'll just go back to working again. So fix that, Sony. Make sure, it seems to be a software thing. It's not hardware, because the hardware works totally fine. When I restart it, it works like it always does, but it'll just randomly just say fingerprint hardware not available, and then just stop. And then sometimes what would happen is that you go into the security settings, and you go into like the fingerprint manager, you don't see anything for the fingerprint manager at all. Like, it just disappears as an option sometimes. That's not happened yet now, but I really do hope that they fix that with the One Mark V, because to me, that's kind of unacceptable on an expensive ass phone. Not even kind of unacceptable. That is unacceptable on an expensive ass phone. At that point, you may as well put another form of biometrics on the phone, just so I don't have to worry about that at all. Other things, honestly, I really don't know. There really isn't much that I would say I would want I really wish they would use their haptics. I really do wish that, like, in the camera. Like, to me, it makes no sense that you have a manual focus slider, but I cannot feel whether or not I'm in focus. I really want focus peaking, Sony. Give me focus peaking. It makes no sense that you have a phone that claims to be tuned by the alpha team, but that I can't even actually nail focus, because I can't see whether or not I'm actually in focus. And even though it looks like I am, I look at the picture, and the picture's, it looks like a mosaic painting, because I can't see whether or not the subject is in focus. So give me focus peaking, please. Like, it really doesn't make any sense that there's no focus peaking on a phone that is, tuned by your camera division. The app is designed by your camera division. So we should get that, right? That just really doesn't make sense. LG had that because their phones obviously still have that. And sure, in the auto mode, when you don't use tracking focus and you get the manual focus toggle, it doesn't have focus peaking. But at least in the manual mode, it does. And that's something that I really do want. I also would like to be able to take like 21:9 photos. That would actually be nice, but you could always just like go into Cinema Pro and just take a screenshot. They literally just have a screen grab button there, so you can just do that. So it's not that big of a deal. And honestly, that's all I can really say, because everything else is like, it's just, I wonder if they're going to change the design up. I really don't care. If they make the design overall the same, it doesn't really matter to me. But I really want Sony to bring their A game. And they've been doing really well with these past few Xperias. And keeping it relatively similar, but then improving in ways that people actually want, rather than trying to copy everybody out there. And I really do appreciate that. And I really also do appreciate that they are actually going to put a larger sensor in their mainline phone. Not even for the megapixels. I don't really care about that. The megapixels, all in all, don't really count, especially since if it's going to be a 48 megapixel sensor, it's just going to bend down to 12 megapixels anyway. It isn't like the V60 that has a 64 megapixel sensor and bends down to 16, so you actually get more resolution there. And for people like, oh, you can't tell, I can tell. Like, in the vast majority of situations, what I've seen is that the V60 definitely has more detail compared to their 12 megapixel bend down sensors. Like, say, the S21 Ultra. It would lose a lot of detail, and it would look, and, you know, subjects would look a bit soft. And that's just something that would be the case. That's the case here too. Keep it relatively the same. Keep the camera operation relatively the same. I really do like that. I really do like how their camera works. I really don't mind. Maybe put 4K 60 in the regular video mode as well. Like, say, in Photography Pro, when you go into the basic mode, give me 4K 60. You don't have to have it be 21:9. I understand keeping that for, you know, Cinema and Videography Pro, but at least in Photo Pro, give me 4K 60. That's really what I want. People are like, oh, give me 4K on the selfie. I don't really care about selfie video. Like, I don't care. At the end of the day, if it's for video calls, most things are 720p to 1080p anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But overall, what I really do want is for the basic mode to not just be basic and give you like the bare minimum. Give me 4K 60. Just give me 4K 60. That way I don't have to go through all these toggles. I don't have to like set up the shot beforehand and then, oh, what happens? I set up a project in Cinematography Pro, then I have to set up a brand new project because this project's in 4K 120 and you want it 4K 60, like all that stuff. It's a little too convoluted, it's a little too messy. And I would just like 4K 60 to just be in the basic video mode in the basic camera app. That's all I really want, Sony. But that's all. Overall, I really do hope this phone delivers on a lot of the things that I want. I really do want a higher quality amp in the phone too. It's not going to compete with the V60 still. There are a lot of phones that just don't still, even if they have like an ESS Saber DAC and all this other stuff and they market it behind that, the tuning seems to be off, or they seem to do a lot of weird stuff, or they put a quad DAC into some headphones and that you had to buy separately, so it's not really something that you need to use with the phone, or all this other stuff. So give me that, Sony. Give me that. Also, I really hope that they, like, if this design is different, make another, like, a gaming edition, and I might end up just getting that. But overall, that's all I want to say. What do you want to see with this one? Are you an Xperia user? Let me know in the comment section below. This is Sparta. Thanks for watching. Thanks for support. Hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday, or whatever time of day it is in your area. Like the video if you like it. Share with people that are interested, and have a good one.